Hello friends, my name is Abhay Kumar and I am sitting right now at TEFLA in JNU, and with me today Dr. Umakant is going to talk about several issues related to human rights of Dalit. Let me first introduce Dr. Umakant. Dr. Umakant has done PhD at the Center for Political Studies in JNU, and his PhD topic was on human rights of Dalit, and he covered the period from 1977 to 1997. And when I came to JNU, one of Dr. Umakant's write-up was a part of our syllabus, and it was taken from his book Caste, Race and Discrimination Discourses in International Context, published by Rawat in 2004. And that book was a compilation of the articles, and the debate was related to whether caste is race or not. And Professor Sukhdev Thorat and Dr. Umakant both edited that book, and that introduction is very, very important. Beside that, Dr. Umakant has been the founding member of UDSF, that is a cultural organizations of marginalized communities, students. And recently, Dr. Umakant has also delivered a lecture at TIS in Bombay, and the theme was Dalits in South Asia. Beside that, he keeps writing for several newspapers, magazines, and he is one of the regular columnists for Countercurrent. Generally, he is known as independent scholar, social activist. He has also been associated with several human rights organizations which take up the cause of caste and also other issues. Some of them are National Campaign for Dalit Human Rights, International Institute of Dalit Studies. He has also been part of that, and International Dalit Solidarity Network, IDSN. Sir, thank you very much for finding time and talking to me on this very important topic.
Thank you very much for asking me to come and speak today. I am very delighted that I've been given this opportunity to talk about several issues which affects the lives of Dalits and Adivasis in this country since millennia. So it's not a surprise for me when you told me that, like, in JNU, Safai Karamcharis have not been paid their salary for last 5 months. I mean,
So, sir, what we will do?
Yes.
We will talk about your journey, your political ideas. But let me take up the questions. The first questions, which is very contemporary, which is happening in JNU. Friends, you will be really shocked to know that in JNU, Safai Karamcharis, the sanitation workers, they have been protesting for several days, I think for 2 weeks. And what is their demand? They have not been paid salary for 5 months. And you could imagine that the Safai Karamchari, sanitation workers, they come from the most marginalized family. And when they are not paid money, when they are not given their due, their remunerations, their payment, their salary, what would have been the case for them? And what could be more inhuman than that? Friends, you have seen recently a news report in the newspaper that the salary for the teachers were delayed for, I think, a couple of days, and it became a big international news. We condemn the administration for not giving the salary of the teachers at the appropriate time. But you see, if salary is not given to teacher, they can manage for some time. But here is the case where the Safai Karamcharis have not been paid their salary for 5 and 6 months, and this is not news anywhere. It has completely been ignored. Administration is not talking about. The workers are still protesting at library, B.R. Ambedkar Central Library. So it was very shocking. So I would like to take your view on this incident, the gross human rights violation, and then we will go back to your political journey, your ideas,
Yes.
and several challenges before Dalit and Bahujan movements. So, sir, first question, sir, why the JNU administration have not paid the salaries for the sanitation workers for 5 months?
See, I'm not the official person to give you explanation that why they have not been paid the salary, but what I have come to know is really shocking. Because JNU says that we have a contract system under which a contractor is selected, and it is the responsibility of contractor to hire sanitation workers and also pay the salaries. JNU gives money to the contractor and contractor doesn't pay. And in a situation like this, the JNU washes off its own responsibility of sanitation workers not getting salary on time. If the teachers were not paid a salary, they made a hue and cry, and immediately within 24 hours, their salary reached their bank account. But here in this case, since last 5 months, and believe me, this is not the first time, it also happened during the lockdown period last year, that for 3 months, Safai Karmcharis were not given their salary. They were working without salary. You can imagine very well how they could be living without salary.
Sir,
These are the people.
talked to them, and some of them have said that they did not have money to buy food.
Yes,
and
yes, that is true. That is true.
They do not have money to buy medicine.
Yes, that is true.
And also, one sanitation worker has told me that the belongings like gas chulha and gas stove and cylinder and utensils that had been held by the landlord because they have not been able to pay the money.
Yes,
you see,
that is true. That is
how
true.
cruel that is.
That is true. And in fact, like for several months together, they have been living a life like a beggar in this country, literally like a beggar in this country. If JNU as a premier institution fails in its duty, it is the duty of premier institutions like JNU to provide a life of dignity even to sanitation
and
workers.
sir, this is happening in Delhi, in JNU.
Yes,
it is not happening in Bihar, in a village that media cannot reach there.
This is happening right in the capital city of India. This is happening in the best public university that you have in the country, that is called JNU. If this can happen anywhere, you can imagine what would be the situation in other places, in faraway corners of this country. So my question to JNU administration is that JNU administration should see to it that the sanitation workers are paid immediately their due salary with interest. With interest, because why should they lose? It is the contractors which is making interest.
Money.
Yes, they would have deposited the money in the bank and they are getting interest on it. So why should the workers lose? They should not only get their due salary, but with interest. Because they have suffered a lot. And if JNU fails to do this, then I think the concerned people inside the campus should take up the matter outside also.
Baba Saheb Ambedkar has said that it is not division of labor,
Yes.
but it is division of laborers.
Yes.
Who are sanitation workers? They come from the community of Baba Saheb Ambedkar. And today, they are starving. They are starving. Baba Saheb Ambedkar's Jayanti will come in 2 weeks, and our leaders and politicians will shed crocodile tears. But when it comes to working and delivering for the most marginalized people, they have failed completely.
Everyone has failed in this country. Everyone has failed in this country as far as human rights of Dalits and Adivasis are concerned. It's not just a question that for the first time it is happening. It has been happening. It has happened in the past, it is happening now, and it will continue. And it is very wrong for Supreme Court to say that how long should the reservation continue. My only answer to this, I have already written this in an article which was published on the Countercurrents website on why caste-based reservation should continue. That as long as the caste system continues, there will be a need for reservation policy or affirmative action of one kind or the other. Because it's a defense mechanism. It is not, a poverty eradication program. It is a question of parity here, not charity. We want, a seat on the table, the decision-making table. If Dalits, Adivasis and other marginalized sections do not get state protection, how will they get that seat on the table? That's why it is a defense mechanism against any and every possible discrimination that takes place in this country in the name of caste, in the name of community, in the name of religion, in the name of language, and several other things.
Friends, I also want to add one thing. Generally, we criticize privatization, but we should never forget that the first victim of reservations, so sorry, the privatizations were Dalit community, where people from Adivasi community, from the Bahujan community. In 1991, what has happened? The privatization has started, and they have started privatizing jobs from the below, and that has hard hit people coming from Dalit, Adivasi, and backward classes community. You see how ironical it is that the professor will be given salary by the JNU, that will be the Pakka employee, but sanitation worker, they are helpless, they have no protection, they have no social welfare, and they are just running from here to there, and nobody is coming to protect their human rights.
Yes, that's a very sad situation, you know. They are the essential service provider. And you are treating essential service providers like an untouchable community. No, we will not touch you. We will not touch you. We have given the money to the contractor. It is contractor's responsibility to provide salary to you, not us. So you run away from your responsibility. It is highly condemnable action by the administration that they have taken this kind of attitude. That Safai Karamchari workers are sitting on a dharna, on a protest dharna, demanding their rightful salary
For more than 2 weeks.
for more than 2 weeks, and nobody from administration has even come to talk to them. This is highly atrocious. How can you tolerate such kind of things in a civilized campus, you know, where people are educated, highly educated, not just educated, highly educated people, highly conscious people, and no organization is paying any attention to them? No one from administration has come to talk to them, as if they are all orphans, you know. They don't matter. Let them die. But tomorrow, if they stop the sanitation worker, what will you do? You will die of many other chronic diseases. What will you do? Whom will you blame? You will say, we have paid money to Safai workers. They are not working. So we will fire them. You can hire a new set of sanitation workers, give them even less salary, you know, and you continue with the exploitative system. Are we going to allow this to happen now? Are we going to allow this to happen in future? Because if we do not intervene now, what will happen? Administration will remain emboldened, and they will continue with the same policy that we have given contract to a contractor. It is their responsibility to take care of whether they are paying salary or not. It is none of our business.
So what is your brief message, sir?
So my brief message is that all the concerned people
Yes.
should hold the state accountable. If there is a need, also go and file a PIL in the Supreme Court, because currently Supreme Court is hearing a PIL on the situation of manual scavenging in the country. So I would urge the organizations here, student organizations, teacher organizations, and other employees associations, that you please take up this matter, because you know the Safai sanitation workers are not in a position to defend themselves beyond a point, because neither they have social capital nor they have economic capital. They cannot continue. They are fighting a battle for survival. You know, it is our responsibility to support them in this hour of crisis. It's a very big crisis for them. If we fail, we will fail the humanity. We will fail the humanity. What message we are giving to the current generation and the future generation people in this country if we fail in our duty? So it is our duty as a concerned citizen of this country to protect the rights of the most marginalized community. You will not find the most marginalized than the Safai Karamcharis anywhere in the world. This is the most marginalized, most despised work that they do. No civilized person likes to get into gutter. No civilized person, educated person likes to get into the sewer and clean it manually. This is still happening despite the law banning it. Despite the law banning it, there is no accountability in our system. That I will explain you how it works, you know. according to the human rights framework, there are three things which are very essential. First, we should have a constitution and subsequently the legislations. Second, we should have the due diligence. And third, we should have the accountability. So we have a very good constitution and we also have very good set of legislations. But where is due diligence? Where is accountability? These two most important factors are missing. These two most important elements are missing. When I say due diligence, people do not even know what is the meaning of due diligence. Even the top lawyers of this country, I had to explain to them what is the meaning of due diligence. I asked this question to a top lawyer who had come to deliver a lecture in JNU. She did not speak. So then I had to explain what is the meaning of due diligence. I said, in true letter and spirit. So legislation needs to be implemented in true letter and spirit. And third element, accountability. Where is accountability? If a government official fails to do the constitutional duty of protecting the most marginalized, who is held accountable? Neither the state nor the officials, nor the duty bearers. So my question is, in the SC/ST Act, there is a section 4, which says that if there is a willful negligence by the officials in implementing the law, they can be put behind the bars for 6 months by the court. If there is a willful negligence. There is a willful negligence in this case. There is a willful negligence. Why section 4 cannot be invoked? The court itself should have taken the matter suo motu, but they will not do because they are overworked. So some concerned group has to go and file a PIL that why section 4 of SC/ST Act cannot be invoked in this case, because there is a willful negligence. There is a willful negligence. Sanitation workers are dying in sewers. That is against the law, because the law says they cannot be forced to go into the sewer. And they are dying. It is still happening. And nobody is bothered. Supreme Court will say, we cannot force the state to respond to our notices. If Supreme Court says this, where will people go to seek justice? Where will people go to seek justice? Government is failing. Officials are failing. The whole state structure apparatus is failing. What option is left to us if not to approach the highest court of the land? And if highest court of the land also says that we cannot force the state government to respond to our notices, where else we will go? If we go to the United Nations, you say, oh no, this is an internal matter of the country, there is no need to go to the United Nations.
देश की बदनामी होगी.
देश की बदनामी हुआ. And they will say, you know what? This was one of the principal argument that why you are trying to wash the dirty linen in public.
Yes.
In an international forum. Fine. You are ready to accept that the linen is dirty. But you are not ready to accept the fact that we can talk about this dirty linen in public or in international forum. That is hypocrisy. You have signed the United Nations International Conventions on Human Rights. On what basis you are saying that this is an internal matter of India and it cannot be discussed in the United Nations? No, you are wrong. You are signatory of international covenants on civil and political rights, economic, social and cultural rights, and you have also signed and ratified several other international human rights treaties. You cannot debar any affected group approaching the United Nations. We will definitely go to the United Nations and also tell them that, look, this is what is happening inside the country, we are not getting justice. You have to make an intervention. And then social scientists like Dipankar Gupta would write, do you want United Nations to impose sanctions on India?
But society
He doesn't even know that it is only the Security Council of the United Nations which has the right to impose sanctions. We have not approached the Security Council till now. We have not approached the Security Council because this is not a security related issue. But we will be forced to approach the Security Council also, because it's a question of human security. If humans are not secured of their life, liberty, dignity, then we will be forced to even approach the Security Council and ask Security Council to impose sanctions on not only on India but any other country, because this is not a typically Indian problem. That we can discuss later. Some other time we will definitely discuss about these issues. Or you can also watch my other videos which are available on YouTube, where I have already discussed these matters. The point here right now is we need to hold the state accountable. We have a great constitution, fine. We have several sets of legislation, fine. But there is a need for due diligence, and there is a need for holding the state accountable. If state is not held accountable, then what is the use of having a state? If state takes care only the interest of the corporate, then why hold the democracy? Why call it, by the people, for the people? Why? If state is going to run by the dictates of the corporate world, then, even the post of prime minister should be auctioned. If a prime minister and the government is elected by the people, then that government, that prime minister, should also be held responsible to the people interest. If government is failing in its responsibility, it is the duty of every concerned citizen to speak against the government. This is not a sedition related case if you are speaking against the government, because it is the constitution of the country, it is the democratic setup of the country which gives every citizen a right to question. Because if you do not question, the state will become autocratic. So it is a democratic right for every citizen of this country to challenge the state, to hold the state accountable. If we fail in this duty, we are failing as a democratic nation, we are failing the future generation of this country, that what legacy you are leaving for your future generations. Are they going to live a life of dignity or not? If today's sanitation workers, or for that matter, this is not the only case that we need to highlight. There are several cases in recent times which has been reported in media of Dalit women being raped, Dalit women being killed, and the accused people are roaming freely. In some cases, because of hue and cry, some of them have been arrested. But how long it will take to get justice, or whether the affected families will get justice or not, is a question that we will have to wait and see how things unfold in the near future. But at the same time, I want to reiterate our position here that in this age of a Brahminical Hindu majoritarian group which has captured political power by fair or foul means, that is for people of this country to decide, they should be held accountable. We should not allow any government to transgress from the constitutional duty of protecting and promoting human rights of every segment of this country. People are being divided, people are being polarized on the issue of caste, on the issue of religion, on the issue of language, and several other divisive matters. It is the responsibility of the concerned citizens of this country to send a strong message to the central government and also state government and other government agencies that if rule of law will be violated, we will be the first person to speak against it. We will be the first person to demand complete rule of law. Complete rule of law definitely involves the due diligence process. Complete rule of law definitely involves the accountability measures also. If there is no accountability, we need to hold the state accountable. There is no choice. State needs to be held accountable for every acts of omission or commission. Otherwise It doesn't make any sense. You can call yourself democratic, but then you are highly undemocratic in your actions. Highly undemocratic in your actions.
You have pointed out very important thing. See the irony of the so-called state intellectual, that when you take up the question of atrocities and human rights violations of Dalit, and if you start talking about this issue at international platform, instead of listening to you and addressing the grievances, they will just try to blackmail you by saying that, okay, if you talk such things, there will be sanction from the international body on India, and then they will question your patriotism. But they never question their patriotism, that why the majority of the people have been deprived of their right to life, their right to land, their right to basic human rights. If they are not fulfilling those constitutional duties, they should hold themselves first responsible than raising finger at you or any other Dalit intellectual.
Yes, that generally happens. When you question, then you will be branded as anti-national.
And here Ambedkar become very important. He
Yes.
says that talking about nationalism and talking about patriotism is very easy, but talking about social evils within the society, if you talk about it, you become marginalized and people will demonize you. Sir,
Yes, that always happens. That always happens. That when you question, you are branded.
yes,
You are typecast.
yes,
I am typecast as an activist. So I cannot get a job
yes.
of teaching in the university or college, because everywhere I go to give the interview, I am branded, I am
As
typecast
activist.
as an activist. If I join, I will do activism. So that is why they don't give me a job. It's as simple as that. You know, some of them openly discuss that, oh, he was at his activist base. If it has been a reserve seat, it would have gone to Umakant, but they never give any job to me.
And when you write,
That's
when you write an
Yes.
essay and you send it to the so-called
They don't even read.
Yes.
They don't even read, because they feel that Umakant cannot write.
yes,
They feel that, like, you know, I'm a product of reservation.
sophistication नहीं है.
Sophistication nahi hai. I'm a product of reservation. I'm very proud to say I'm a product of reservation policy, which has been, you know, gifted by Ambedkar to us. And I'm equally notorious than other people. I can speak very good
Okay,
English.
okay.
But let me come to the question that you had raised. Shortly, I'll explain. See, on the question of people not getting right to work, not getting right to land, not getting right to a means of livelihood. If you question, then you are being targeted. The state agencies will hound you. They will say, if you don't stop your activism, we will put you inside the jail. And several activists have been put inside the jail. My only question is that if you do not question,
What is the purpose of education?
not only that, then how do we say that we are living in a democratic system?
Okay.
First.
Yes.
And then will come that being an educated person, being a person who has benefited from the reservation policy, being a person who has benefited from, you know, the best education that this country provides, so it is my responsibility to pay back. But on the question of atrocities which is being committed on Dalits and Adivasis, it has, you know, seen a tremendous rise in last 10 years. Tremendous rise. You know, I'm someone who has an experience that the government statistics do not give you the full picture. I have seen it. But even if we accept that, okay, fine, that is the government statistics, how it is that despite the best effort as claimed by the government, the atrocities and the untouchability cases that is being committed on Dalits and Adivasis are steadily rising over the years. Steadily rising. Like in one of the previous meeting I was explaining that, like, you know, up to 2013-14, you will see that, like, you know, the average annual atrocity cases that was being reported by the National Crime Record Bureau report called Crime in India was around 25 to 30,000. Suddenly, from 2005 onwards, you will see there is a steady rise in the cases that are being reported to the police stations now. From 25 to 30, 35,000, it is now in the range of 45,000, 47,000. It is steadily rising every year. Why? Has the state failed in its duty of protecting the most marginalized people? Yes, definitely. That's an indication that state and its duty bearers, they have failed. So there is a need to crack the impunity that is enjoyed by the state, the duty bearers, and also the perpetrators. There is a need to crack the impunity because, perpetrator also knows nothing will happen. If Dalit rights activists are killed in Gujarat, which happened recently, despite having a police protection, then how will you explain helpless Dalit people being humiliated, Dalit women being raped at caste Hindus' free will, and nothing happens to them? Several kinds of atrocities cases are being reported in this country, and nothing happens to the perpetrators. The conviction rate is very low. How do you explain? Because the non-implementation of the government law is also a crime. Because if you are not, once I told one of the senior functionary in the government that if you cannot implement the law, please burn that law. Please burn the constitution of this country. What is the point of having a law if we cannot implement? It's very essential that we have a law. Yes, I agree with it. It is essential to have a law. But it is equally important that we should implement the law. If we fail to implement the law in totality, then there is no point having that law. It is as simple as that. This the government needs to understand. It's not that they do not understand. They do it deliberately. There is a case of willful negligence. But believe me, no officials or very few number of officials have been held responsible on this ground of willful negligence. There is a willful negligence by officials at every level. But who will hold the officials responsible? It is the responsibility of courts to hold the official responsible. But courts have also failed. Courts have also failed to get the law implemented. It is very right to say that it is not the responsibility of courts to frame the law. Fine, agreed. But it is the responsibility, it is the duty of courts to see that law is properly implemented.
In letter and spirit.
In letter and spirit, in totality, not in just bits and pieces. Not in just bits and pieces. So if Dalits are not getting justice for social, economic, cultural rights, if Dalits are not getting justice for civil and political rights, whom should they approach? The government says that you have to approach the government machineries. If you don't get justice from there, you can approach the court. So we have been approaching the government machineries for last 70 years after independence. We don't get justice. At the most, what they will do, okay, fine. There is a lot of problems, so we will redraft the legislation. They will redraft the legislation. And then also we don't get justice. And then when we say that no, we need to hold the state accountable, we need to hold the district officials accountable for not implementing the law, they will say no, don't get into confrontation with the government. I said, for how long? If they are not implementing it, we need to confront them at some point or the other. But they say, no, first let's have the law. We will take up this matter later on. But that later on period doesn't come. We keep on pleading with the government that you please implement the law, people are not getting justice, but nothing happens. Some lipapoti happens. Okay. Some measures will be taken. Oh, fine, we will have a Justice Verma committee, they will make recommendations and a new piece of legislation will come and that will take care of everything. But then, Justice Verma committee will not look into the whole problem.
Holistically.
from an intersectional approach. They will say, no, don't try to divide the women on the question of caste and religion. We are saying that let's have intersectional approach. Caste plays its role, religion plays its role, region played its role, language played its role. There are several other cultural matters which played a role in everyday life of a woman in this country, but they will ignore it. Fine. A new law is drafted. Several more cases are being reported to the police station, but nothing happens. You look at the cases of rape being reported in this country. You look at the cases of, attacks on minorities in this country. You look at the cases of attacks on Dalits and Adivasis. Every single day, on every hour basis, atrocity cases are being reported all over the country. Every single hour. And state doesn't seem to be concerned. Society at large doesn't seem to be concerned. Everything is treated as normal. So we have to break this fallacious normal state of affairs in this country. Nothing is normal. Who will do this? Do you expect the victims to fight with a hungry stomach? Emaciated body, a body which goes into the sewer. You expect that person to fight for his rights, and you will not utter a word because it is none of your concern. You are not going into the sewer, so why should you speak? No. We have to break this. We are failing in our duty as a concerned citizens of this country if we are not speaking on behalf of the most marginalized people of this country. It is same on us. It is same on our education. It is same on our social conscience. It should prick the conscience of the so-called nation. But it doesn't prick. Any attack on the dignity of Dalits, Adivasis, women belonging to, these marginalized community, the Muslims of this country, the Christians of this country, who are seen as non-Indic religion. They are seen as a threat to the hegemony of the Brahminical religion in this country. So, if we do not speak, we should not say that the victims only should speak. That is my only appeal, that let us all fight for justice, or else we are failing the humanity, we are failing the constitution of this country. The government or the political parties which are in power, they will not be bothered about these things because they have a habit of, creating a crisis situation and playing with it. They enjoy it. It is how they come into power, by dividing people, by polarizing people, or society at large. And it's a very good example of divide and rule. But as a concerned citizen, if we are not speaking on behalf of the most marginalized, the victims, we cannot claim ourselves to be progressive intellectuals of this country. I am at a very pain to say that such things have happened in JNU. Last 2 weeks, our sanitation workers are sitting on a strike and nobody is paying any attention to them. I'm very pained. Why this situation has come up? Why nobody is speaking on their behalf? They are trying to speak as much as they can. Beyond that, they cannot. They are very weak. I'm not making a judgment on them, but I am saying we are in a far better situation. Why can't we speak for them? Why can't we work for them? So I am making a request to every organizations that please issue a memorandum, some pamphlet, some posters, extend your solidarity with them, go sit with them, demand for a meeting with the Vice Chancellor or the government officials in this university. If there is a need, go and meet some lawyers, file a PIL if there is a need. Supreme Court is currently hearing a PIL. So why can't we add this case also? This is not the only place where contract system has been implemented. Contract system is working in all the municipal corporations. It is the contractors who hire these sanitation workers and they force them to get into the sewer, and in the process they die also. So this contract system should be challenged. Sanitation workers are the essential service providers. So they should have a permanent job. They should be provided with, social security benefits. They should be provided pension. They should be provided free education, because they are the most essential service provider. If they stop working, this country will go down. This country will go down.
It will not work for a second.
Yes. So they are the most essential service provider, and they should be provided the most care by the state. Here we are seeing that they have been left at the mercy of contractors. Whether contractors will pay or not, nobody is to be held responsible. This is nonsense, utter nonsense. How can a state institution, public universities are also a state institution. They are autonomous, fine. Some amount of autonomy has been provided, but it cannot say that it is not.
It cannot go against constitution.
Yes.
Autonomy doesn't mean that it will go against constitution.
No, it is a public funded university. It is not a private university.
Yes.
It
And
is
even private university.
Even if you are a private university, you cannot go beyond. Yes, you cannot go against the constitution of this country.
Yes.
Because that is the foundation on which the country is run. That is the foundation on which the government is run.
So friends, Dr. Umakant has put the thing in right perspective, and he had said that we should speak up, and this is not the just questions of human rights. It is linked with question of caste, questions of dignity, and questions of so many other things. Sir, I would like to take one question about your political journey and your association with Ambedkarite movement, because it is linked with what we are just talking about, because it will bring about more clarity. Sir, you joined JNU, and you were one of the founding members of UDSF, United Dalit Students Forum. And it is based on the idea of Ambedkar and other Bahujan thinkers. And you were just talking with some other students, and you said that never think that UDSF is just a cultural body. It doesn't contest in elections. So in that sense, it is not political, because it is beyond from electoral politics.
Yes.
But it is very much political in a sense that it takes up political questions.
Yes.
And you have said that you have come to a study, you are talking to other students of JNU. Your first priority should be that a study and pay back to society, and never feel ashamed of your identity of being a Dalit. Rather, you should be proud to call yourself a Dalit. You should call that I am a product of reservations. So why these ideas are important? Because many of our friends may want to know more about these very important and critical issues.
So it is very good that you asked me this question, because you are asking me to go back into little bit of history.
And Umakant sir contested student elections in 1995 in JNU.
I'll come to that. I'll come to that.
During his speech, he said that the time has gone for Eklavya to cut his finger, thumb, and for the Sambuka to be killed.
Yes.
That era is gone, and he said at that time that we will fight ballot with ballot,
bullet with bullet,
and bullet with bullet. That means that Dalit movement, the political activists belonging to Dalit Bahujan group, they should be ready to use all methods, all tools within the constitutional framework,
yes,
and to wage a very radical struggle.
Yes.
Because if we are not aware about our rights, it will not be given. And as Baba Saheb Ambedkar has said, that if rights, if Hakuk is not given to people, he will be the first persons to do away with this constitution. Yes. Sir.
See, I'll go back into past life of my life so far.
Many people don't know, sir.
See, I was very fortunate in that sense that I was exposed to Ambedkar at an early age in my life. It was in 1980, I still remember. At my house, the literatures which were produced by Kansiram Sahab, Bamsev, the oppressed Indian, that was in English, and in Hindi it was called Bahujan Sangatak.
Bahujan
Sangatak,
Sangathak.
yes. So these two journals used to come to my house also, and from there it was to be distributed to several other people. So I started reading Oppressed Indian, I started reading Bahujan Sangatak, and my father also had a very good collection of Ambedkar literatures in Hindi, and also some of it in English also. So I started reading on my own. My father saw it, he never objected. He said, yes, you should read Baba Saheb, but not at the cost of your studies. That was his only caution. I have no problem, you read Ambedkar, but at the same time you should also do your studies. I said, fine. So from an early age I started reading. At that point of time I was only in class 6th, 1980 onwards. So I read more over the years, and by the time I was in class 12th, I was already Ambedkarized.
So that consciousness already.
Yes, yeah, I made an effort
Okay.
on my own
Okay.
because I was getting a very good support from my father.
Okay.
He never objected to it. I became an Ambedkar.
He just said that first give priority to your study.
He said, you do it, but not at the cost of your studies. You study this also.
Yes.
I have no problem. So in that sense, I got a very good supportive atmosphere at my house. It helped me in becoming an Ambedkarite at an early age. By 12th, I was already an Ambedkarite. When I came to the college in Delhi University at Hindu College, there were no SC/ST Student Association or even OBC Student Association. But around that time in 1989, VP Singh government decided to implement the Mandal Commission recommendations for 27% reservation for OBCs, and Delhi University became a hub of anti-reservation movement.
Protest.
Yes.
Anti-reservation protest.
Yes, anti-reservation protest. And it became a big hub.
And all liberals
Yes.
oppose reservation.
Yes, most of the liberals were opposing, because it is for them to maintain their hegemony in society, because they see a threat that if these people come, they will come in large numbers and we will be marginalized. So that is why they all oppose. So I tried to organize a little bit, succeeded to a certain point, but not enough. In between, I completed my BA Honours in Political Science from Hindu College, and I got admission in JNU in 91. So when I came here, I had heard very many good things about JNU, and some of our seniors who were trying to organize things differently. So that is how there was a meeting held at Parthsarthi Rock in the month of July itself in 1991, and we decided to form United Dalit Student Forum. The United Dalit Student Forum was to be a political organization, but with a difference, that it will not contest the electoral politics. That was the only difference. Otherwise, it was to be a political organization, it was to be a cultural organization, it was to be a human rights organization, it was to be, Ambedkar Study Circle kind of forum, everything. The idea was that we should make our people conscious. So that's why the first slogan that we said, feel proud to say that I am a Dalit. This Brahminical order never makes you feel proud. It makes you an element of pity. So we said, no, we are not an element of pity. Why should we feel bad about our own identity? This word Dalit has not been given to us by any Brahminical system. Our movement, Baba Saheb used it, our movement has given this word. So we should say that yes, there was a guy later on he went to the US. He got some very good slogan. I think during the centenary celebration of Baba Saheb, this slogan was written somewhere. If black is beautiful, Dalit is dignified. So with that kind of attitude, we started our organization,
Sir,
United
if I
Dalit
may
Students.
ask one question, left has been very strong on this campus. What was the need to have a separate
Yes.
body known as
See,
UDSF?
till the time UDSF came into existence, the left has been using our people.
Using.
Yes, using only for
You are
political.
using very strong word.
Yes, I am using very strong word.
Yes.
We have made it very clear. We made it very clear that time. We made it very clear several letters also. That left was only saying, in their poster they would write, fulfill SC/ST quota. And there itself their responsibility ends. They will never see, they will never question that SC/ST quota is being fulfilled or not. Till the time UDSF started making intervention with the JNU administration. Till 1991, JNU was giving 10% reservation for SC/ST in admissions.
SC plus ST.
10% reservation.
As against 22%.
Yes, 0.5%.
Yes. 22.5% constitutionally.
Yes. JNU was implementing only sometimes 10, sometimes 11, not more than that.
Okay.
So we made intervention every year from 1991 onwards. And we forced JNU administration to give 25% reservation also in one particular year.
Okay, so I want to repeat this point.
Yes.
Sir, are you saying that before the establishment of UDSF
Yes.
in early 1990s, the reservation in JNU for ST and SC was given up to 10-11%.
Yes.
That should have been around 22.5%.
Yes.
That constitution says
Yes.
that that is the mandate of constitution.
Yes, yes.
But you struggled and you fought, and after years of a struggle, you were able to get something around 22 to 25%.
Yes.
So this is your first achievement.
That was the first achievement of UDSF collective responsibility. You know, the unique thing that UDSF started was the concept of collective leadership. There is no president, vice president, secretary, joint secretary in UDSF. There is a central committee. And the idea is that there should be a collective responsibility. So that is why collective leadership. I cannot say that I have done this for UDSF. No. I will always say that it is UDSF which did it. Maybe me, this guy, that guy, or 4 or 5 people,
We
10
all work
people,
together.
we all work together.
But the credit should-
Individually we cannot claim.
Credit should go to the organization.
Yes, the collective leadership.
Yes.
That was a unique thing which was started by the UDSF in this campus. And that is how we were able to force the administration to take into account that you have to fulfill it. And it is only after the intervention made by UDSF, you will be surprised to know when JNU was celebrating its
Yes,
silver
you
jubilee.
told me.
Yes.
Yes.
When JNU was celebrating
Celebrating?
silver jubilee,
Yes.
there was a demonstration by the United Dalit Student Forum, and the President of India's program had to be cancelled. Because we pasted posters everywhere in the campus saying that in 25 years, what has JNU given to SC/ST students? 10% reservation. How many faculty there? 3-4 people.
And
What kind of fellowships are being provided to Dalit Adivasi students? Nil. You know, they were also getting MCM as other people were getting. That's all. Nothing more than that. No remedial courses for them. Whereas Government of India allocates money for remedial courses. Nothing of that kind was being done. They were facing all kinds of problems. And we made a big demonstration, big halla gulla. President of India Shankar Dayal Sharma's program was cancelled. Sakal, who was the HRD minister, she came, she gave a little bit of speech and then she also left. So it was a big success for us to challenge the authority here that look, you have not given justice. Start doing it now, or else we will create troubles for you.
Friends,
And
it is not only reservation for students.
yes, even for
at
faculty.
the faculty level,
Even
you
at
will
the
not
faculty.
find
I'll
that
tell-
Dalit teachers are getting their due.
I'll tell you how it happened for the faculty reservation. It was only in 1984 that JNU adopted a rule saying that they will give 22.5% reservation for SC/ST faculty appointment. It was accepted and adopted as a rule in 1984, but it took them 11 years to appoint a first person under reservation category in 1995, and that also because of the intervention made by UDSF. I will not tell you the name of that person who was appointed as a first person under reserve category in 1995, but this is a fact. All other 5 people who were working in JNU before 1995, they had been appointed under general category, not under reserve category. You know, so it took JNU, after accepting that yes, they will start from 1984 onwards, the first appointment was made in 1995 only, and from there, you know, they have been regularly appointing, but even now it is not yet full, because there are so many pending appointments to be made. Some people have gone and challenged it in the court. So, and recently Delhi High Court also gave a judgment saying that there will be no further appointment in JNU if it doesn't rectify the roster. So that will take little more time for JNU to make
Sir,
appointments.
if you allow, I also want to add that the conditions of Dalit teachers and Dalit students are more or less the same.
Yes,
as far
yes.
as Adivasi
Definitely.
and ST teachers and ST students are
Definitely,
concerned.
definitely.
They are also not getting reservation.
Yes,
and
definitely.
Interestingly, OBC students had to wait till 2007 or 8 and 9, and then there was a huge demonstration, court cases, and then they got reservation, and still in JNU OBC reservations
It is not being implemented properly.
It is not been implemented of late.
Yes.
Some OBC teachers have come, but still they are not getting their due.
Yes.
Sir,
Yes.
now I want to take one question. We will again discuss in some another meeting. Many Dalit activists or those who are young scholars who believe in ideology of Baba Saheb Ambedkar, what is your message for them? Suppose not only for those who are studying in JNU. So for example, somebody who is studying in my district Motiari in Bihar, or maybe your district in Gaya, or somebody is in
Patna.
Kerala, somebody
Yeah.
is Bengal, or somebody is studying, let's say, in Madhya Pradesh. What is your paigam? What is your message for them?
See, before I come to that, let me give you one more example how UDSF made a very positive intervention, and for which future generations of this country, especially belonging to SC/ST community, they should remain thankful to UDSF. You know, there was one letter which was issued confidentially to all the central universities in the year 2000. I'll briefly mention this case. And under that confidential letter, which was sent to the central universities by the UGC, saying that from next academic semester there will be no reservation for SC/ST students in higher education. We somehow got a hand on this confidential letter. So first we went to the JNU Vice Chancellor and 2 rectors. We sought an appointment with them and we asked them not to implement this. The Vice Chancellor, Professor Ashish Datta, said if no directive comes from the government, we will be forced to implement it from next academic semester. We said, please wait for some time. Then one of the rectors said, who gave you a copy of this letter? This is a confidential letter. I said, that's none of your business. We got a hand on it, we made it public. And we lobbied with the government, we also lobbied with member of parliaments, and we did it very strategically, and we got the order cancelled. So the future generations of SC/ST communities would be very thankful to UDSF for this, because the credit goes to UDSF. If reservation is still there in central universities, it is because of them. That is why it was necessary for me to talk about it here. Now, coming to your question, final question, last question.
Your message.
Yes, my message
Yes.
to people of this country,
Yes.
whether they belong to SC/ST community or they belong to Bahujan community, or everyone who is conscious should always remember that being the beneficiary of a system which has given you education, being the beneficiary of your own effort, that you became a conscious citizen, it becomes your responsibility, it becomes your duty to work for the less advantaged people, people who are most highly disadvantaged. If you are not thinking about them, if you are not working about them, then there is something fundamentally wrong with the education that you have got. If an education that fails to make you conscious, if an education that fails to make you rational, if an education that fails you to question the iniquitous Brahminical social order in this country, because that is the root of all problem in this country, believe me. If you see it from that angle, then only you will be able to understand that there are genuine problems in this country, only because of this caste system, only because of this Brahminical caste system.
And people think that caste system
No.
is a problem for Dalit community.
No.
They
It
don't
is a
realize that caste system is also a problem for the upper caste people.
It is a problem for the whole country.
Yes.
It is a problem for the whole country. It gives advantage, it gives privileges only to a selected few. Only to selected few. That every section of this society, every section of this country needs to understand that it is the only obstacle for the progress of the nation, for the idea of the nation. If you fail to understand, that means you don't even understand what is the idea of a
Caste
nation.
is against democracy.
Yes, caste is against democracy.
and
Caste is
democracy-
against human rights.
Yes.
Caste is against democracy, caste is against human rights, caste is against justice.
So if
caste is
democracy
against accountability.
has to survive,
Yes.
caste must go.
Yes, caste must be annihilated. That is what Baba Sahib used to say.
Yes.
If you cannot annihilate caste, you will never be able to even understand what is the level,
And
what is the magnitude of problem in
Sir,
this
when
country.
I became aware about, let's say, caste.
So that is why my only submission, my humble submission, my request to everyone in this country is that if you love yourself, you should also love other people who are less fortunate than
and
you.
fight caste.
Yes.
And when I started reading caste, earlier I thought that caste is only exclusive problem for the Dalit community. But I realized that it is also causing great problem. For example, a upper caste lady, if she falls in love with, let's say, non-upper caste boy, she cannot marry. And if she married, she might be attacked, she might be killed.
Killed. Yeah, this is happening. This is happening.
Her sexuality is being controlled through the institutions of caste. The country is not progressing. Economy is stagnant because of the caste, and huge merit which our society has, that is not being channelized.
Yes.
And our society is stagnant because of the caste, because very few people are privileged and they are ruling the roost, and they are at the center, and they are utilizing all the resources.
Yes,
and majority of the people
definitely you are right.
kept deprived.
You are right on this question,
Yes.
and that's why I'm very thankful that you gave me an opportunity to talk to you,
So,
and
Dr.
through you, the message will reach to millions of
Yes.
people. I'm
so
definitely sure.
Dr. Uma Khan, the PhD scholar from JNU, and also human rights activist, independent scholar, has spoken on variety of issues, and his central concern is that let's speak against all forms of injustice.
Yes.
And we must protect human rights.
Yes.
We cannot expect all the time that the victims who are in a very vulnerable situations to fight for themselves. As a concerned citizen who believe in democracy, we must protect them, we must stand with them, and that is why the issue which is going on in JNU, where several Safai Karamchari sanitation workers who are protesting against delay of their salary for last 5 months. That is big human rights violation, and we must speak against that. Dr. Umakant sir, thank you very much for talking with me and with all of my friends.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you. Yes.